Hey everyone, how are you doing? I hope you're good. Today we're going to be tackling a pretty controversial topic in the Saints Row community, although it's one that has been addressed in other people's opinions before, but I wanted to give my thoughts on it. Which Saints Row ruined the series? Now, I personally don't think Saints Row is ruined, but it's definitely had its departures and definitely had its quote-unquote fall-off period. So which was the game that ruined it? Because it's going to be a pretty interesting video, because I know some people think it's 3, some people think it's 4, but I'm going to give my thoughts on it, and yeah, let me know if you agree. So for this, I think you first have to really understand what do you mean by ruined. Are we talking sales-wise? Because in that case, Saints Row 3 would be the peak, which isn't obviously what they mean. I think they more mean, when did Saints Row go to this point of no return? Why did they have to end the series and essentially reboot because of it? And which was the game that set them into this state of just like misery, really, with the Saints Row community and its fanbase? Because I mean, at the moment there seems to be 3 contenders. I mean, the Saints Row the 3rd, the Saints Row 4, and then there's the reboot, because I know that's definitely out there at the moment. A lot of people feel like the Saints Row was really ruined by the reboot, but I'm going to give my thoughts on it. What was the Saints Row that really just messed up? And now, I'm not going to say that the reboot's ruined, really, so I'm going to keep that one out of this video, because I think that's a different topic for a different day. So we're going to all be looking at 3 and 4, okay? So when I think of a ruined Saints Row, 3 doesn't even come to mind. I can see it's an obvious downgrade, and no one's denying the fact that 3 misses a lot of features, but so does 4. And it's definitely between those 2 games, is what I'm saying. Like, there's no way anyone can say Saints Row 2 was the one that ruined the series, because that is just incorrect. So, looking at both the games, 3 and 4, I think we need to look at them individually, not how they contribute to the overall storyline of Saints Row. You know what I mean? So, in these cases, we're going to look at both the games and just see what they did right and wrong. So, in my opinion, Saints Row 3 would have been a fine game. I think it was not at the point of no return, and I think that Volition could easily have pulled the story back in the 4th game if they'd have done it right. I don't think they could do that with 4. So, if you want the short version, I think 4 was the one that really ruined the series. But here's why. So, in Saints Row 3, we end off with a split ending. You either save Shaundy or kill Killbane. If they would have gone with the kill Killbane route in Saints Row 4, and then made the story about the bosses return back to its gritty roots after having such a dark and traumatic event happen, that could have been great. I think that Saints Row 3 is a weaker game in the series, but I think that it didn't ruin the game for Saints Row fans. I think that Saints Row fans were still on board, just not as much as they were before. But when Saints Row 4 came out and kind of just blew everything out the water, I think there's no denying that a lot of Saints Row fans lost hope. To get a bit of scope on this though, think about it like this. If Saints Row 4 had followed off of Saints Row 3's Killbane ending, and saw the return of the gangster roots of the Saints, following Johnny's death, Shaundy's death, Viola's death, and the death of Mayor Reynolds, and the Saints seen as terrorists, that game could have been insane, and I think that the Saints Row series would have been saved. But instead, because of bankruptcy, they decided to just stretch a DLC into the game, and I think that's where we really went just off tilt and ruined the series. Because, I mean, while 3 is not a perfect game, I think people would have just overlooked that it was one of... They'd have just gone, well, 3 was one of the weaker in the series, but it didn't ruin it. But I think that we're now at a point where the old story is kind of tarnished by 3 and 4's impact. But 3 by itself wasn't too bad, in my opinion. It just saw the Saints' slow, like, descent back to its gritty roots if we ended with the Killbane ending. But we didn't, and that's why 4 messed up, in my opinion. 4 could essentially have saved Saints Row 3's story. If they would have gone and just portrayed Saints Row 3 as the boss feeling like he's on top of the world, owning the towns because of his popularity as celebrities, and it slowly returned with him being the gangster boss, like he was in Saints Row 2 at the end of the game, leading into the 4th game where he'd have gone back to being gangster, and gritty, and kind of just a badass sociopath. I think that would have been insanely good. I think that really could have pulled Saints Row 3's story together, essentially. And if they'd have followed with the boss's ending, where he was that gangster guy who was all about revenge, and he went back to being the psychopath who did let his friends die, just so he could get revenge. Imagine what would have taken place in the 4th game. It could have been insane, but because the 4th game didn't go with that, That is why we lost hope. And then, on top of that, there's smaller things as well. There's the fact that the 4th game was the only game to full-on reuse a city. While Stillwater was reused in 1 and 2, it had such a notable upgrade that, in my opinion, it's not the same, like, map. It's a completely different thing. But Steelport is Steelport in 4, and honestly, Steelport's not that good in the first place. So the fact we had it for 2 games, and arguably a worse version in 4, is definitely an impacting factor. We also had Superpowers. That was a game changer, really. It really threw the whole series off tilt, and while I don't think it made it a bad game, I think it definitely made it a bad Saints Row game. The story was strung together quite weird, and the Earth exploded, meaning there was no real way for them to go back on what happened. I mean, as shitty as the writing must have been, think about it like this: even if the Saints beat Zinyak and the Earth was still there, then I guess in some way they could have had a possible return to being the street gang after 4, but they didn't go with that. Not that Saints Row would have ever been the same. It's a very weird... There's just a lot of weird decisions with 4, and that is because it's a DLC stretched into a full-length game. In my opinion, it also had much more annoying activities than 3. I think that a majority of the activities added were awful. The only ones I really liked were Genki's. Love you, Genki, by the way. I just think that Saints Row 4 was the real drop-off point. I think that while Saints Row 3 was a bit of a drop, I think it was a drop in quality, a drop in writing, at least had the core gameplay, fun factor, and it somewhat was grounded, you know what I mean? It wasn't too crazy for the Saints Row series, really, when you think about it. I mean, it was crazier than 2, yes, and a lot of people didn't like its craziness, but it wasn't like a different plane of existence crazy, you know what I mean? I think Saints Row 4 was that. I think that Saints Row 4 really marked a notable drop in just quality as a whole. Saints Row 2 is a great game, and I think it would have been pretty hard for Saints Row 3 to live up to that regardless. And Saints Row 3 definitely didn't do a good job of living up to Saints Row 2's quality, but in my opinion, what it lacked in quality and story, it made up for in other areas, like the engine being better, and all these other enhancements, like more wearable outfits. I like the voice options more. Hot take, I know. But I think that Saints Row 4 didn't really have any of that. I think Saints Row 4 didn't innovate very much, personally, and I think that that was the real drop-off point for me with the Saints Row series. That was kind of like, not that I ever thought Saints Row 4 is bad, don't get me wrong, I think Saints Row 4 is a fun game. I just don't think it's a great Saints Row. And I think that that, to me, was the game where the series was just like an unbelievable parody of itself. Now, Saints Row 3 was technically a parody of its earlier self. It felt like that at times, and I can definitely understand why people would think that. But Saints Row 4 takes the whole parody of an open-world crime game to another level. I mean, I'm basically an Avenger. It's pretty, it takes it to, like, an extreme, is what I'm trying to say, and I think that, that is why people lost a lot of respect for the Saints Row series with Saints Row 4's release. Somehow the reboot has got a worse reputation than Saints Row 4, which I find Saints Row 4 was quite literally just a carbon copy of 3, with near enough nothing but downgrades added, in my opinion. But I mean, I guess it did have some cool missions, and I think Saints Row 4 is not a bad game, and I want to make a video talking about Saints Row 4 and my thoughts on the game as a whole, because it did a lot of stuff right, but I think it just did so much stuff wrong for Saints Row that it ended up being a cool game, but a bad Saints Row. And for me, it marks the point where the Saints Row franchise took a bit of a dip. I think it definitely took its stride downwards from this point, and Saints Row 4 ended up being a weaker game in the franchise, by far. And I think, you know, I think it just lacked a lot of innovation, personally. I mean, when I say, what's the one thing Saints Row 4 added, everyone goes superpowers, but even that was kind of just copy and pasted from Saints Row 3, with the Saints flow just upgraded, you know what I mean? It really didn't innovate a great deal, and it just reused and copied stuff from, like, previous titles in the series, even the missions, for example. Like, as cool as they were to go back to, it was just the same missions as before, and I think that that was really when Saints Row got a little lazy, personally. Well, I say lazy, it was just DLC, wasn't it? It wasn't their fault, really. They were told to do something, they did it, and it didn't work out. I want to say a quick thank you to the channel members, the Annoying Midget and Stupid Town, for supporting the channel more than they already do. Thank you guys, I love you. Before I go though, I got a really cool announcement. So I'm on eBay, doing my thing, kicking ass, taking names, looking at listings about Saints Row news and merchandise. You know, exploring the internet, so to speak, kicking ass at the technological sales of eBay. And I spot something, a diamond in the rough, a Saints Row the 3rd Platinum Edition from 2011, still in package, for like $40. I'm like, bro, I'm hopping on this, so I'm clicking, I'm like, click, 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 click. I purchased it, it's on the way, and if I didn't get scammed, it's going to be a really cool video, so I hope you look forward to that. I'm going to have a blast of it, and I know you guys are going to enjoy it, because you'll be able to take a look at some Saints Row history from the original Saints Row the 3rd game. I mean, obviously, when that came out, I was like 8 or some shit like that, honestly. Like, I was 8 years old, so it's going to be a blast. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you. I'll actually leave you to go now. Bye.